Hey Ben, how you doing? Good, good, good. I'm going to be your voice for today. I know that's really, for someone like you who was so amazing, it's probably a hard thing to do, right? Okay, but out there, could you just look at our friends out there and maybe give them away? We could do that together. What do you think? Well, hi, it's Marilyn Price and a replica of Benjamin Franklin, one of the greatest men to have ever lived on this planet. I say that because if I could, I would have loved to have met him, to sit and had dinner with him. And he agrees with me too. This, of course, is Puppet Ben, and I am Marilyn Price, not a puppet, a real live person who admired Benjamin Franklin's work greatly, although I lived a very long time after he was gone from us. So let me tell you a little bit about Ben Franklin here on the Mentor Project, which is a perfect place because I don't think there's been a better mentor than Ben Franklin, who did so many wonderful things. And he didn't have a great, amazing start. He was born in Boston, and throughout the course of his career, he ended up in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. And having spent some time last week in Pennsylvania, yeah, I was right out there, I actually went to see his grave. People leave him gifts, and it was wonderful to be in the place that he did so much of his great work. He was a writer, a scientist, an inventor, a statesman. He was a diplomat. He was a printer. He was a publisher. He was a political philosopher. He was one of the founding fathers of the United States and a drafter and signer of the U.S. Declaration of Independence. And he was also, this is something I really can relate to, he was the first Postmaster General. That meant he was in charge of all the mail, making sure you got it. hmm I don't know that he ever, did you ever deliver any mail? Of course you did. You had to see how it worked, right? He also helped to found the public library system. And let's see, what else can we, oh yes, he was the first president of the Academy and College of Philadelphia, which became not much later on the University of Pennsylvania, which you can go and walk around today. So, Ben, thank you for all those things. Give me five, or in his case, two. What we're going to do today is do a little bit of history lesson. So, if you look behind Ben and me, you're going to see what may look like a quilt to you, but what it actually is a replica that I built. It was already there. I didn't build the states this way, to show you and some of my other students a while back what 9 states, although you're going to count with me, of course, because there's more than 9 here, helped to ratify the Constitution. And to do that, they had to have something called a Constitutional Congress in their state. And then they sent delegates to vote on that in Philadelphia. And Ben was there. He was one of the delegates, as we've already talked about. And I'm sort of like to go through these states. Now, if you're counting with me, you can maybe see little tiny Rhode Island there. I'm going to actually go over and point, Ben and I are going to point that out to you. Here's Rhode Island, just kind of right back there. So look at this. These states are mostly in the same spot. These were the provinces, the states, the colonies that were the original part that came to the United States. They all came for different reasons, pretty much. But what really fascinated me, and I hope it does you too, is their names. Because everybody has a name, right? I have a name. You have a name. Ben had a name. And the name Benjamin is really an awesome name. So I'm going to talk to you a little bit about each of the states as I tell you which of the ones helped to make this flag. I got me a flag. May not look terribly familiar to you, but look at that flag. This is the flag that we flew. Betsy Ross made this flag. So look at that. How many do we have? Yeah, if you can't count, that's 13 stars. We now have 50. But that's because we have 50 states. So these, however, were the 13 states. I'm going to use it to help point out which of the ones. Would you like to do that for me, Ben? That would be so nice because, we don't want to get you. You know what? You could actually point with the flag. He's a very clever puppet. All right. So let's do this together. Here they are. Here are there are, if you count, you'll see there are 14. In order to ratify the Constitution by a certain date they were given, you had to have 9. Eventually, all the states would come in, but we needed 9 to begin because that was the number that the Constitutional Congress put together. So 9. So we needed 9 out of these 13 states. Now, if you're looking this up here, and you happen to be from that part of the country, you see not one but two, Massachusetts. And already someone's called me on that. Because what you see up here, that is Massachusetts, we now know as Maine. As a matter of fact, there's a whole bunch of stuff that is different now. But this was what was then, not now. And that's good to remember. Isn't flat? Yes, Ben, you can wave your flag. So let me help Ben here, okay? Can I help you? Ben often called for help. See, he was born in 1708. So when the conference met, he died just a couple of years after that. He was already in his 70s. So he was a little tired, but full of all sorts of energies and wit. A lot of wit. He said some incredibly famous things, which became proverbs for some of his work. So, but let's now go to our very first state, and is one of our smaller ones. You know what I'm going to use? I'm not going to use the flag because the flag is way too valuable. I'm going to borrow this pointer here. Is that okay? And Ben and I are going to show you. The very first state to ratify, to vote for the Constitution was the tiny state of Delaware. Now, isn't that a great name, Delaware? Do you know what Delaware means, Ben? Of course you do. Delaware is named after Lord de la Warr, and it was founded in 1630. And Lord de la Warr was the governor of Virginia, which is pretty interesting because Virginia is all the way down here. But Delaware got that name, and we call it Delaware. So that was the first state to come in on December 7th of 1787. Shortly thereafter, 5 days later, along came Pennsylvania. Here is Pennsylvania, Delaware, right next to Pennsylvania. And that came in on December 12th, 1787. And that state was named after William Penn, who was the founder of the state, one of the signers of the Constitution. And he wanted to add this word here, Sylvania, because it meant extensive forest area, which is the way Pennsylvania looked then, and Ben agrees, looks now. Third one to come in only 6 days later on December 18th of 1787 was New Jersey. Where's New Jersey? Here it is. Right here. New Jersey, number 3. New Jersey, which was named after the Isle of Jersey off the coast of England, because you have to remember that all these folks who inhabited this part of the land now came mostly from England. Given to them as land grants, and they came for lots of different reasons. They came for religious freedom, they came for better opportunities, came for lots of reasons. Number 4, all the way down there, I don't know if you can see it, I think you can, just part of it, that's the state of Georgia. State of Georgia voted on January 2nd, 1788 to ratify the Constitution in their meetings, and that state was named after King George the Second, not King George the Third, King George the Second. So thank you, King George. You're going to see some names that happen like that. Now, this state up here, Connecticut, came in 5th. Connecticut came from an Indian word which means, river whose water is driven in waves. And it comes from Kawanakakut. Kawanakakut. Isn't that beautiful? It's a beautiful Indian name. Not Native American name. Now, thank you. And in February 8th of 1788, Massachusetts voted to ratify the Constitution. And that comes from the Algonquin Indians, and that means Great Hill, Small Place. great hill, small place. And it was the first state in its time, not the ones that I just read you, that was named after the Native Americans who lived there. So that is really cool. So now, if you look up here, let's just take a second. Massachusetts was here and was here. Later on, this became Maine, and New Hampshire kind of fit right in, which was really good because Maryland, which is the seventh one to ratify the Constitution, came on April 28th, 1788. Is that right? Did I get that right? Thank you. And that was named after Queen Henrietta Maria, the wife of Charles I of England. Thank you, Maryland. I had an uncle who used to call me Maryland, but my name is Marilyn, not Maryland. But I took it with good grace, as would Ben Franklin. Now, number 8 to come in, getting close here, was South Carolina. South Carolina, you might even be able to figure out this yourself. Obviously, South Carolina is below North Carolina, and Carolina was also named after Charles the First. So thank you, Charles. You gave us a lot of names. But North Carolina, what you think might have come in after that, did not. The next state, and the state that was responsible, give me 5, for ratifying the Constitution was New Hampshire, all the way up here. Now, some of you may live in states that are not shown here. That happened later on, as history happened later on. Now, the next, we are now officially could ratify, but the rest of them came in. The Continental Congress will meet, but the rest of the states rolled in, and I'd like to give them credit where credit is due. All right? Okay. The next one, number 10, was Virginia. Down here. Virginia was named after the Virgin Queen of England, whose name was Elizabeth. And they called this piece of land, this beautiful piece of land, Virginia. Number 11, up here, New York. Now, York is an English word, country of York, and this is New York. So most likely, if you're logical about this, the people who settled here came from York, or at least some of them. Now, we have studied a lot about this, and the Duke of York was named after the Duke of York. Now, this whole state at some point was also called New Amsterdam. Remember how South Carolina came in? Well, now it is North Carolina's number 12. And this land was granted by Charles the Second. And because of that, they named it after him. And last, and certainly not least, although it is the smallest state, was a little Rhode Island. They never had the meeting. They never had their own constitutional convention, but they ratified it anyway. And the name Rhode Island means red clay along the shore. And these are our country. But I have a little factoid that Ben and I asked him, would like to share with you. And that is that once upon a time, there was a state named Franklin. I knew I'd hear from you eventually. Franklin. There was a state named Franklin. It declared its independence from North Carolina. I don't know what the argument was about. I'm sure we could find out in a history class. And in 1784, they formed their own state named after our Ben Franklin, right? But when they did have delegates, they sent them to North Carolina rather than their own constitutional convention. But the Confederation Congress refused to admit them to the Union. So in 1789, the state of Franklin came to an abrupt end, and the lands in 1798 became part of the new state. Did not go back to North Carolina, but became, congratulations, Ben, Tennessee. Now, our friend Ben Franklin did not live to see that because he died in April of 1790. A brief history lesson for you about the states we live in. Now, as you know, we no longer, I mean, you can still buy them. I was excited to find one, have a flag with only 13 states. We have a flag with 50 states, and each of those states has a story. They all stand for independence and learning, and that's what our friend Ben Franklin would like to help us do too, because to learn is a great gift. So I would like to read you one of my favorite quotes of Ben Franklin's. Do you mind? Or would you like to read that for me? I would. Okay. Tell me, and I forget. Teach me, and I remember. Involve me, and I will learn. I thank you very much for joining Ben and I today as we taught you. And I hope that you become engaged and involved in learning things out about this magnificent country, the United States of America, who became united as they studied and learned together. So for me, here, Marilyn Price on the Mentor Project, look us up. You can watch on Facebook, LinkedIn. You can listen on a podcast. Or if you want to hear us again, you just go to the Facebook page and YouTube. So Ben and I are saying goodbye to you, and may you live for a very long time happily in your country. And that, ladies and gentlemen, that's the end.